There's a folder on my computer called I Am Not Stable that contains 210 gigabytes of like stabilization tests. And I've been hovering my mouse over it, thinking about deleting it, but I decided, why don't I take you on a little tour of my gimbal journey? If you're used to a gimbal like I am, it's actually surprising when you turn off all stabilization and handhold the camera just how much shake there really is. I tried to use post-stabilization techniques to restabilize the footage after shooting it, and I found that like it actually wasn't possible. It still looks garbage in, garbage out. Allow me to introduce my my current gimbal, the Weeble 3, and as you can see, it's actually busted. So in addition to one of the locks breaking, so it flops around, the main issue is that the motors seem to be shot. There's a shaky effect when I'm shooting. And so back to the test footage, I quickly realized that no stabilization at all is just not good enough. So what if I turn on some in-camera stabilization? There's something called lock mode, which is on Panasonic cameras, where it basically simulates a tripod. So it makes it look like the camera is not moving when you're hand holding it. It's typically not advised to use this while moving, but I was thinking, okay, so what if I just hold the camera straight? Presumably the camera will like maybe use the gyros or something. I mean, it is moving the sensor up and down, and it'll basically try to eliminate all movement. And that's what I want. So let's see how that looks. My impression was like, first of all, it looks pretty good. Like it could be usable for a short, brief clip. But the issue is actually all in the corners. So if you look at the corners, it starts to become hard to ignore the fact that it's like warpling and warbling and just like jiggling jello, right? And that is not fixable. There's no way to remove that once it's in your footage. And so this is not like a solution that I can roll with, except in a pinch. There's a kind of like golden rule of stabilization that not a lot of people are aware of, which is that like rotational movement of the camera, where it's like rotating up and down, actually a lot different than what you might call XY motion, where you move the camera like up and down without rotating. And actually like, so if you take this footage that I just shot, and then if you apply stabilization that tries to remove all motion, you'll see that even though the rotation up and down was much kind of stronger, it can almost entirely be removed. See that? Isn't that crazy? And then check out the XY motion. You know, it's fundamentally different. See? It can't be removed. And then just to compare, isn't that crazy? Yeah, so like the rotational movement, it looks a lot more dramatic even. And then it just disappears. And then the XY movement is pretty small. Then you try to remove it and then it's still there. So, this is not really like a industry term, but I decided to call this Parallax Motion. And Parallax Motion is XY movement of the camera, and it cannot be removed. So check this out. This is a spreadsheet I created showing different kinds of stabilization. IBIS, we just looked at that. That does not fix parallax motion. In-camera digital stabilization, this is your rock steady or something. Also doesn't do it. Lens IS, nope. Using a wider lens, we'll see that causes the warping that we've seen already. Warp stabilizer and just like basic post stabilization. Nope, doesn't fix it. You know, tracking point. Nope. Slow motion. It is slow motion. I mean, you're not going to be able to stabilize footage of someone talking, but that's like an option. Watching on a smaller screen. Like, yeah, the screen size matters. If you watch a video on a phone, it always looks stable. You watch it in VR, it always looks shaky. Bulking up your rig. Well, see, I don't want to do that. You could shoot on a shoulder rig, and yeah, that would help. Gyro data post-stabilization doesn't help. Gimbals, they actually don't help. They only stabilize rotational motion, not XY. That's why you see there's something called the gimbal bob. And now we get into some more exciting solutions. Steadicams. They do stabilize what they call the Z-axis. They have that arm attached to your chest. So that does fix parallax motion. But there's an issue. Wife would kill me. Easy rig. This is where there's like a rope hanging down over your head. This is possibly even uglier than a Steadicam. The Ronin 4D has like a chicken head effect. Have you seen videos of chickens' heads moving? It's so weird. Anyway, the camera does that. So that actually is, I mean, that camera is extremely expensive, but you know, it's there. Dolly. Yeah, see, like for travel videos or something, no way. Jib. Come on. Some people use a wheelchair to get stable footage. See, but actually, like the main thing is like just walking technique, the ninja walk. Reviewing the footage from my first test, I was actually like somewhat dismayed at how shaky it was. I thought, like, is that the best I can do? So I decided, okay, I'm gonna be like a Zen master. I'm gonna like carry so smoothly, like a swan swooping into a pond. This time I'm gonna like, instead of locking my arms like I would when I'm standing, I'm going to try to use my arms more like a spring. So I'm like holding the camera. Okay. Maybe it didn't work so well, but one thing that did work well is I switched lenses. Previously I was using my 9mm, which is an 18mm equivalent of full frame, so like an ultra wide. That caused warping, but I used my 24-70 equivalent lens at 24mm, and that fixed the warping. And you know, already getting some pretty cool looking footage, pretty stable looking. It's a huge improvement. Okay, so I've got the 9mm. This is the lens that's causing the distortion that you were seeing. And I want to kind of demonstrate, like, why does the distortion happen? So if I take that painting there, and if I track it and stabilize it in post-production, and make sure that it doesn't move, so it's stabilized basically, you'll see that the distortion of my lens, as I pan it around, will cause it to be distorted. So it's actually sort of a property of the fact that my lens has distortion. Okay, that test is pretty interesting. So let's switch to my 24-70 this time, see how it works. Also, I want to try like a 50mm equivalent. That should be where there's like absolutely no distortion at all. I'm actually aware of 4 cameras, only 4, that have technology to fix this. The GH7, S12 series, and then and the results you can get with those cameras is actually crazy. There's a couple of artifacts that you're seeing in these videos that I want to point out. Number one is like the glitchy, like twitching effect that you're seeing in the image. And then the second one is like the black bars on the side, like popping in and out. Both of these are artifacts of tracking point stabilization. So what I would do is I would use the software to like identify a point and then track it and then move the video around that point. And what you'd think would happen would be that you would make the video perfectly stable. But actually it has only a pretty minor effect. You know, and this is because of what I showed earlier, the parallax motion cannot be removed from the footage. What that does mean is that if I overlay like a little indicator that's not moving on top of the footage, you can see that there's a part of the image that's not moving at all, which is kind of interesting. So I stabilized it around that point. And yet, it doesn't really look that stable. So it really emphasizes the need for like an amazing ninja walk. And then regarding the ninja walk, I noticed like a fascinating way to measure how good you are at it, which is look at your shadow. So if your shadow is not bobbing up and down, that means probably the camera's not bobbing up and down. So that's like a good way to measure your performance. Like check this out. It's like I'm on wheels. I'm like a floating little ghost. So that's a successful ninja walk. As I started practicing ninja walking, this is what it looked like at the beginning. I eventually realized that there's a couple issues with the way I was walking. Number one is I didn't really use my toes. I was just walking kind of like the back of my foot to the middle of my foot. And number two is that I was walking too slowly. I eventually upgraded my ninja walk and used my full foot, heel to toe, and I was able to get much better results. But as you'll see later, there actually is a way to improve even on this. I started this process with the hope of getting rid of my gimbal, and I made a lot of improvements. I improved my skill with the tracking points, I improved my ninja walk, I also switched from the lock mode, which wasn't really working that well, to just basic electronic stabilization, and I'm getting better results. The results are really impressive, actually. But it just makes me start to wonder, like, if I can get this handled in the camera, like, what is possible if I do use a gimbal? How far can I take this train? I also tested slow motion. But beyond the downside of everything, all the motion in the shot looking a little weird and for the movement of the camera being half the speed, another issue is that if there's any warping at all in the corners, it's actually accentuated and emphasized by slow motion. So even though I'm using the 24mm equivalent lens here, there's enough warping that it actually ruins the shot. Well, ladies and gentlemen, so with no further ado, I'd like to present my new gimbal. I got a new gimbal. This is around my birthday. It is a DJI RS4. Oh my God, it's so exciting. I think it's sort of funny that I started this project with the goal of getting rid of stupid gimbals, and then I ended up just like, you know, splurging on like such a fancy and capable device. But I guess I really sold it to myself. I proved that it's necessary, let's say. And do I love it? Yeah, of course I love it. It's like, it's more stable, but the thing that I didn't expect is that it would like feel more fun. Like, so there's something about it that just feels really fun. I just want to play with the footage. It's not something you necessarily like immediately see on the footage. Then the other thing is like the temptation to just stabilize everything eased off a lot, let's say. But I do think, you know, stabilization is still needed. So like I did this test and I was like, okay, so how much closer to what I'm going for does this get me? And it does need a little bit of help. And so you know what that means? The testing must continue. Check out this little short film I made. I didn't wake up that morning just be like, oh, I'm gonna make a little short gimbal video. Just like, I got home and from the walk and I was just like playing with the footage and I'm like, little trim here, little edit there, and it just kind of like poof, came out of nowhere. And that just kind of illustrates like, oh, it's so fun to use a gimbal actually sometimes. But also, you know, it is true that there still are some issues with the footage. The legendary gimbal bob that everyone who works with gimbals becomes familiar with, where the gimbal stabilizes everything except for the up and down movement of each step. That is still there. Check out this channel that I found. The guy's name is like Toshi. You know, of course, whatever your interest is, there's someone in Japan who can exceed you at it. He's using a Laowa 10mm lens, just like ultra wide. And gets these like crazy videos with like absurdly smooth gimbal movement. You can see like the barest, tiniest amount of like parallax motion. Look, he could do it even on the stairs. My God. I kind of hate it. I mean, I respect it. Look, I was going through this video, I was like looking for like proof, like he must be on wheels. Like, I'm not even kidding. This guy's gotta be on wheels. Or he's gotta have an ugly easy rig on or something. Because how is this even possible? And then I found this shot. Pay attention. Stop! Okay, see that? Look. He has a big camera backpack. He's walking. He's not on wheels. My God. The last shot is so like frustratingly unstable. I kind of left it in as like a challenge to myself, like, fix this, bro. It's kind of mean to myself looking back on it. The bob is still there. Here's RS4 in all its glory. Here it is compared to my Gimbal 3. So it's a little bit bigger. Interestingly, they're actually the same weight. Probably one of the more important differences is just the stabilization algorithms. So like, the RS4 is definitely more stable. Like, it really removes all the rotational movement, period. However, the Weeble, it does remove all a lot of the rotational movement, but it actually leaves a little bit in. And I find that actually that sometimes looks more natural. It never reaches the same heights as the RS4, but it also has it tends to look more organic, I would say. Another difference is that the RS4 is a little bit more picky. So like, if the camera's not like properly balanced, it will have more of a tendency to shake, and it needs to be calibrated specifically for each setup. The Weeble is pretty tolerant about like putting the wrong weights on, and I think that might be why the motors are shot. So maybe that's a negative for this one. I made a couple of modifications. One thing I did is you see here on the bottom, I mounted these cold shoes, and that will enable putting like wireless transmitters on. Pretty happy with how flush this is. One of the best features, obviously, is the fact that it can auto lock and unlock. I mean, come on. How insane is that? It really saves time. It's so cool. There's actually a debate around filmmakers about whether you should turn on your camera stabilization on when you're using a gimbal, because do they fight each other? And I've seen some fascinating videos where you can actually see the IBIS sort of like undoing the gimbal stabilization. However, the gimbal does have a little bit of jitter getting through. So those are like the small, like high vibration types of shaking. So I did some experiment to try to figure out like how much camera stabilization is needed. I wanted to see how stable I could get if I spent a couple hours stabilizing the footage. I ended up with something very satisfying, but that parallax movement, that up and down bobbing, once it's in the footage, it literally cannot be removed. However, compared to the way it looked before, it is an improvement. It's undeniable. I mean, you have to look closely, but once you look closely. The big difference from last time is that I forgot to calibrate the gimbal before. Now it's calibrated. There is no greater torture test of a gimbal than pointing it straight and just walking straight with no movement or anything. It maximizes the parallax motion that can't be removed in post stabilization, and it also can't be removed by the gimbal either. It's a torture test that reveals your ninja walking skill. And it also happens to be one of the most important shots you can get. The shot of just moving through a space. Each time I do this test, I almost learn something about the way that I'm walking, even the way that I'm feeling. I mean, I'm well into this testing process now, so this is the way I'm starting to think.
Be water, my friend.
One way to reduce parallax motion is to make sure that there's no parallax visible in the shot. This shot looks great until I pull back and show the fence, and the fence has parallax. Then all of a sudden the shot starts to look shaky. Another pro tip for you is that 30 frames per second looks shakier than 24 frames per second. And of course, that means 60 frames per second is the shakiest looking. It's not that there's less shakes, it's just that it kind of it matters less. I'm not sure why, but. Another one is zooming in. So the more you zoom in, the shakier it's gonna look. Here's 24 millimeters equivalent, 50 millimeter equivalent, 70 millimeter equivalent. One thing I like is this mode switcher here. So if you put it up at the top, then you have the ability to, it's like your most common mode. And at the bottom, it says FPV, but actually you can configure this. So what I did is I made it so FPV is the optimal settings for the most smooth motion. And then this PTF mode would have a more responsive settings for a vlogging situation where you're kind of reacting to things as they happen. It's so easy to switch between the two. So you can actually switch between the two in the middle of a shot, for example. That's pretty nice. Another thing I did was I got this small rig NATO rail attachment. You can see it's a bit battle hardened. And I attached a strap to it. This enables me to kind of hang the camera off of my body, kind of behind me, so it's less intrusive when I'm in a public place. And then when I'm really ready to shoot, I can bring out the gimbal. And then this is really easy to remove. So all I have to do is that. And now I have the gimbal free. And then when I'm done, put it back on my body, I can do this again. It's important to figure out all the different ways that the gimbal could come apart or detach, because you don't want to drop your camera. So I'm constantly checking all of these connections here. Then on the back, you have to do this, and this. I've got that down in pure muscle memory. Don't ask me how I know that it's easy to drop your camera. I don't want to talk about it. One pro tip is that there's actually a mode on this guy that can only be enabled through the app that significantly increases the performance of the gimbal. It's kind of like, it's not newbie friendly, so I think that's why it's locked into the app. But if you turn deadband on low, the gimbal will ignore a lot of your smaller movements. This is deadband on medium, so this is the default. And if I turn it, it's immediately responsive. But if I put deadband on low, it waits a second before responding. What that does is it removes some movements that would have not been removed otherwise. So that's definitely advised. Little pro tip for you. Okay, next up, flashlight mode. The clip you're watching right now actually like threw me through a loop because it looks so stable. And I was doing a flashlight mode test where I like held the gimbal in a weird way where it's like pointing straight instead of up and down. And it looked better. I mean, look at it, it looks stable. Why? Why did that work? I did it so many times holding it in flashlight mode. It never looked like this again. I think I just felt like less pressure because I didn't think it would work. So I was just relaxed. That's why it looked more stable. So now you can see how deep down the rabbit hole I am.
Be water, my friend.
The goal is to find out. This is the true gimbal settings. Oh, it's a pan follow. No, it's not. Why didn't it tilt? Merlin did not do this. I'm changing the way I walk to be like, try hard. Is it worse? I've rewatched these clips a whole bunch of times, and even now it's sort of like profound, like obviously something clicked. I don't know if you see that, but if you just look at how smooth the parallax motion is, it's smoother. This has no stabilization of any kind on it. Most of the other clips that I've shown already do. I changed the way I walk. Lots of tiny steps. Camera's low battery, gimbal's low battery, and I'm still going strong. Many steps. Oh, God. I don't know, it's surprising that something like this was just waiting to be discovered. Probably it's not something I could really explain. Just a better way to walk. But it sure feels exciting to figure it out. Here's what normal walking looks like. So, anyway, and go. I wish I could say that smooth motion has clicked ever since then, but that's not the case. You know, every time that I walk and I'm just tense, it's not stable. There's a real art to this. But I realized that I had to bring this chapter of tests to a close. I had to wrap it up. There's just time for one last test. Thank you so much for watching my nerdy deep dive into stabilization. If you've made it this far, I hereby crown you nerd. And now that the video is complete, I can do what I always do with my footage after finishing a video, which is delete it. If you're watching this right now, my computer's going to be a lot lighter than it was before. As a final thought, I was thinking maybe I can weigh in on what I think the future of stabilization might look like. There's something called Gaussian splatting, which is like taking a normal video and 3D scanning using a machine learning algorithm to basically 3D scan the environment with no actual like LiDAR or 3D scanning technology needed. The main application of that today is to create like 3D environments for like video game engines. But actually, when I was watching some of the digitized environments created from 3D scans, the thing that jumped out to me most was there's no parallax motion. It points at the possibility of using Gaussian splatting techniques to eliminate all parallax motion with post-stabilization. I know, you can't predict what's gonna happen, but that's something that I'd like to see. So again, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and until next time, see ya.